Ryan. I'm good. How are you? Happy
Doing
Monday.
great. Yeah, happy Monday. We're here.
We're
This is
here.
our first episode of 15 Minutes with Judi. I'm really excited about it.
I am.
Um, just to kind of start off, I know we're going to be talking about TSIA that happened last week, but I want to talk to you about Halloween. What are you doing for Halloween?
Oh, wow. So this is such a topic. I actually find Halloween to be a really bizarre event and day, and I do everything possible to avoid it. So I do. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe trauma when I was young. Who knows? But I try to stay away from it. Now, when my son was little, I made him costumes and I took him, for the typical trick or treating. But as an adult, I find no reason to be a part of it. So
That's
no.
funny.
What about you?
I think it's funny. Making costumes is such a part of it. My mom made a ton of my costumes, and now my wife is making my daughter's costume. And I think a huge part of it is the memory of it being
Mhm.
homemade and the keeping of the costume because she's spending like 20 hours on this costume. It's
This
like
is
we
fantastic.
could have bought like a you know Amazon dress by now, but it's going to be beautiful, and we have ones already from the past few years that are so cool just to have. So this
Yeah.
year she's Belle from Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, fantastic. My
Yeah,
best for Colin was I glued, Smarties candies. I glued hundreds and hundreds of rolls, not individual Smarties, but
yeah.
rolls of Smarties up and down his pants. And a t- a t-shirt that said, "You can call me Smarty Pants, everyone else does." Um, I did miscalculate though how heavy those pants would get with hundreds of rolls, but he was a good sport. He tackled through, and it was a great costume.
That's awesome. And then I found out you and I share a common bond on what I call popcorn surprise.
Oh, yes. It's not movie popcorn unless there's peanut M&Ms dumped in, and when you reach in and you get just the right amount of little sweetness, the peanut and the popcorn. I don't understand people who don't do this. I think that, there's this duality that we have here, and I can really only, handle it. And by the way, gone to movies and they haven't had them, and my husband has gone out to find the closest store near the movie house to get me peanut M&Ms. So
Yeah.
it's a thing.
That to me, that's because folks do it with different candies, but for me, that's the candy
Yeah,
that fits with the popcorn the best. Yeah,
absolutely. It is. Yeah.
that's
No
funny. So
Raisinets here. No.
yeah, so we're back from TSIA.
Yeah.
And for those that didn't attend, the theme this year that I saw was breaking down silos, bringing silos together. And my first big question is, why is this important, and how can support and success help the cause?
Absolutely. It is so important because we're all talking about unifying the customer experience, improving the customer experience. We're talking about margins. We're talking about improving the employee experience. And yet, if we are all operating in these very individual walled silos, we can't effectively do any of those things. And yet, I think that especially in today's economy and with what we're looking at around, quite frankly, let's talk about layoffs. People are afraid, to break some of those walls down, because as long as I still have, my role and it's very crisp and it's very defined, it's harder, for people to come along and, potentially do reductions in force. But I also think, it's time. We've been talking about this a lot, and I really applaud TSIA. They always drop one of those kind of bombshells on the industry, and they've done such a beautiful job over the years of, sparking the conversations and sparking the change. The interesting thing about success and support is we have more in common than we think we do. People used to think it was a little bit of a friction-filled relationship. And I think in some cases there is friction, but it's healthy friction. It's not unhealthy. Um, but support and success have something going for them that a lot of parts of the company don't have, which is the amount of time they're actually spending with customers. Product, they're not spending that same kind of time. Even sales isn't spending the same kind of time. And yet support and success are just constantly engaging with customers. So they have more of that customer voice that they can bring to these breaking of silos. The other thing they have is data. Support and success, and support probably in this one more so, sitting on data that is just massive. And using that data correctly, applying insights to that data, and then feeding it back to the other organizations, product, sales, services, education. Education is a big one. Education is so necessary for all of us in our organizations. George Humphreys, did one of his sessions and talked about education. And, it was basically, if you don't know how to change the oil in your car, the car's not going to run, right? And you need to know how to do certain things. And that's the same in any product that's out there. People need to know how to use that product. And so get that information back to education. Who's filing the how-to tickets? How many how-to tickets are they filing? What how-to questions are coming in, and how can education build real-time on the spot, training and videos? How can product embed that into the actual product? So we can sense when a customer is struggling a little bit, and we can give them that information. So the other thing I think cautionary is, we talk about breaking the silos. It's okay to start with bending, right?
Mm.
I think break comes up and people kind of get a little bit, oh. It's okay. Bending is fine too, right? Sometimes you can bend and be very, very effective, and you don't have to break it. So, let's put some gentler terms there as well. And I think for some organizations, that'll be easier to swallow.
That makes a lot of sense. And you're right. I saw a common theme about data and support and success. And you're right, because there's all that data, it's a great place to start with AI. It's a great place to really examine. When you think about TSIA, was there something that surprised you at the event?
Well, obviously, I've been involved with TSIA for probably 20 plus years. It surprised me that none of us have aged. We all look exactly the way we looked 20 years ago. So, best surprise ever. We all just gelled and fit right in the way we did. Um, but I think the thing that surprised me the most probably is that people, are still living in some of those old motions. And, there were conversations about it. And I think this was another data point. How many organizations, or what percentage of organizations, have been successful in, navigating the new SaaS world and such? And it was, and the SaaS transformations. And it was shocking, less than 10%. And I think it was another George Humphrey moment where he started at, let's say, 50 and no, 40, no, 30. You're like, come on, how low can this actually get?
Yeah.
And less than 10%. And, we know it's probably more than likely true. TSIA has great data, but I think what it is, we were all born and raised, in the traditional software, hardware companies, and we're clinging to what we learned.
Mhm.
And, back to education, right? Even some of us old dogs need new tricks when it comes to how to navigate the new world. And that one for me was the most surprising, that we just don't have the amount of success yet in the industry, especially for how brilliant so many people in this industry are.
Do you think I felt that too. Do you think that folks are kind of waiting it out a little bit, waiting to see where's the successful tools, where are the right things to use, where's the right process? Do you think folks are kind of a little overwhelmed with what 2023 has been when it comes to developments?
Yeah, absolutely. This AI thing, right? Where was that a year ago? Sure,
Yeah.
people were talking about AI, but it wasn't what it is. And, I don't think it's so much waiting. I think we are overwhelmed. What do we do? Where do we start? How do we go about this and tackle it? But I also think it's, that term paralysis by analysis, right? Well, there's so much. Let's dig in. Let's do projects. Let's da da da. And yet there's so much of it that you can never get through the research phase of it. And, this is one of those times you have to take a leap. You have to jump. And, we had a panel that SupportLogic sponsored, and we had some great panelists. Sander Slavens from IBM, or I'm sorry, he was with IBM. He's now with John Deere. Pankaj with Automation Anywhere, and Stephen Davis with Gainsight. And we talked about the fact that we have to start somewhere and start some of these projects. Don't look for the biggest bang, because you may not be able to tackle that one, but look for meaningful areas where you can make a difference. And I'm always a proponent. Make the difference with your agents' lives. It's the way to get them on board to help drive what you're going to do. Trying to go external and do amazing things for your customers, they're kind of not wanting to be your guinea pig. So let's not make them the guinea pig, right? They've been through a lot of transformation with us over all the years. Let's try something internal and use AI to make people's lives better. And then, we can continue to build and take that velocity and work with it, as opposed to, again, just analyze, and then you're just stuck because you've overanalyzed.
That makes a lot of sense. I really liked that part on the panel where you all really talked about starting with the agents, right? Back to starting with who's getting the data, where can we make the biggest difference? And I thought an interesting part of the conversation too was talking about quelling some of that anxiety, right? Because that seems to be a role that's really worried about, how is AI replacing me? How is AI potentially taking my job? So yeah, that's a great angle. We're going to get that recording when we get a chance, but did you have more on that thought?
Yeah, well, the replacing of the jobs, right? And it is a fear, and that fear has been in the support industry for decades. Support often looked at as a cost center or a break even. If we were going to reduce costs, everyone knows you would look to support, because it's 89, 90% of the cost is headcount. So if there's a cost cutting motion, it means that you're taking headcount out of the equation. And now you have these tools that can potentially automate humans. And the answer to that, or the opposite side of that, is no, not replacing the humans, replacing the tasks and making the job more meaningful for the humans. And, we have talked about this for decades in support. Support can be a meaningful place to have a career. It doesn't have to be just the place people start out so they can make a move to other departments. Now, it can be, that's perfectly fine, but it can be a meaningful career. So let's make it meaningful right out of the gate, and let's get the mundane, repetitive tasks removed, and let's make it interesting and compelling, and using those deep technical skills that a lot of support engineers have. And for the support engineers who are more, let's say, not technical, they're customer service oriented, let's make it that they're adding different value to the customer conversations they're having, as opposed to the, typical things that we all know happen when you call into support or start a chat. I think it's up to us to make the jobs more interesting, because, in a few years, the jobs that we all have, every one of us, we're going to need new skills and new capabilities. We're going to have to start training that in today, because what it takes to do this that you and I are doing, it's going to be different in a couple of years. You and I need to learn the new skills. Agents need to learn the new skills. All the way, CEOs, all the way up and down that pike. Let's start the education now. Let's start removing the task now and opening up time for education, skilling, reskilling, upskilling. I think that's really necessary, because if we continue to burn at the rate we are with the tasks, we're not going to have time, and the upskilling is going to catch us flat-footed. We're not going to have the time then to do it. So let's make the runway right now.
That's really great insight. Thank you for that for that elaboration. And this has been a really great first episode of your 15 Minutes with Judi. I'm excited about this. So every other week, we're going to be doing one of these. And folks, if you're watching this first one, if you want to ask Judi a question, if you want to join Judi and we can have a fun conversation, email me, ryan.radcliffe@supportlogic.io. You can email Judi at Judith Platz at supportlogic.io. And let's get you on. Let's get your questions. And I'm really excited for having more of these conversations. Judi, thank you for starting this off.
Absolutely, Ryan. My pleasure. Thanks for being a great teammate on this one.
Hey, you got it. All right. Have a good day.